Hello and welcome to our latest Hornby Magazine DVD, featuring exclusive video footage of 11 standout layouts from the pages of Hornby Magazine, 2 instructional tutorials on soldering and static graphs application, and highlights from the Great Electric Train Show 2017. Bilston Road featured in the May 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Owned by Jeff Reed, this large 18-foot by 11-foot 00 gauge layout is housed in Jeff's loft and set in the West Midlands during the 1950s and 60s. Analogue controlled, the layout features scenic sections to all 4 sides, as well as 2 large hidden storage sidings. On departure from the upper storage yard in the diagram, the line links with that from the station and heads through a tunnel onwards to open countryside. Midland 4F 43924 it's a short mixed goods train, formed of open wagons, a box van and a couple of containers. As the line meanders through the reverse curves of the countryside section, we join the 4F's footplate for a journey towards the imposing 10-arch viaduct, built from scale scenes kits, and passing a lengthy train of mineral wagons heading in the opposite direction. Watch for the pub nestled below the spans, and the working colour light signal, such as the attention to detail. The next section of our journey takes us through the urban approaches to Bilston Road Station, past the locomotive depot and goods yard, and through the impressive station platforms. As we take the through road, we pass a passenger service hauled by Princess Royal 462 on an express. Note the detailed rooftops, town buildings and large road transport depot as the locomotive skirts through on its journey back to the storage yards. Ashton Junction appeared in the July 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Built by Barry Platt, this impressive 00 gauge 17-foot by 8-foot exhibition layout is set in the West Midlands in the 1970s, inspired by childhood train spotting days between Birmingham and Reading. Representing a fictitious location on the Worcester to Cheltenham line, it features a double-track main line, large station, 3 platform faces, dairy and an RAF base. Here, a pair of DCC sound-fitted Class 20s approach the station from the east, crossing the main line in the process, and recess in the loop platform with a loaded coal train. Freight includes a diverse selection of local and long-distance traffic, from oil trains, coal and automotive to milk tanks destined for the local distribution depot behind the station. Ashton Junction features 10 baseboards and is fully DCC controlled, with sound-fitted locomotives amongst the roster. Approaching from the west, a Class 52 Western diesel hydraulic thunders through on an express passenger working. With the route now cleared, the double-headed Class 20 haul coal train departs Ashton Junction, while another Western rests between duties alongside the milk depot. We hop aboard a Bachmann DCC sound-fitted Class 25, wanting a rake of ballast hoppers, for a cab ride through the station. As we slow to allow a quick driver change, note the level of detail included in the layout, such as flower beds, seated passengers, yard lighting towers, telegraph poles, colour light signals, and a quick glimpse of the RAF base control tower as we head into the tunnel. You can see more of Ashton Junction in HM 121. Middle Elmton appeared in the February 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Peter Brackenbury's superb 16-foot by 2'6" N-gauge layout follows BR Eastern and Midland region practice in the East Midlands during the 1960s and features a mainline station plus a separate branch line. A Thompson B1 460 exits the tunnel with a rake of Gresley corridor stop and heads across the junction which leads to the Bolsover town branch, slowing for its station stop. Descending the branch towards the bay platform at Middle Elmton Station, a Class 101 DMU arrives with a connecting service from Bolsover. Heading in the opposite direction, a Class 31 approaches with a lengthy coal train formed of steel mineral open wagons, passing over the level crossing and taking the bi-directional through route at Middle Elmton Station. Once the route's cleared, the B1 departs. Adding a splash of glamour, a Midland Blue Pullman unit heads through on an express working, crossing to the through road as it approaches the station. The line sees a varied mix of passenger and freight services, such as this WD Austerity 280, heading a trainload of steel girders along the bi-directional through line. Meanwhile, a 9F 210 follows with a lengthy train of box vans, container flats and cattle wagons. Scenery is what takes a model railway from being just a basic baseboard and turns it into a realistic model world. As Hornby Magazine's editor Mike Wilde demonstrates, there are plenty of products to choose from, including a wide range of scatter materials, such as these that you see here. And they're all colour-fast too, which means that once you've added the glue, they'll continue to retain their original colour. One of our favourite methods is to mix the flock powders together to vary the overall tone, and it also helps to create a realistic appearance to the grass once it's been applied to a layout. But that's really just the first stage of creating model railway scenery. In recent years, one product that's transformed scenic development is static grass, which has advanced the abilities of what we can create even further. The static grass fibres stand on end and give a much more realistic impression of grass. One of the first products you might come across is a static grass mat, such as this Gagemaster product. They're pre-created sheets which feature static grass on a backing sheet. They can be cut to shape, moulded over landscape contours, and some are even more detailed to represent moulded water effects, which provide a highly detailed effect for a model railway. To really make the most of the medium, static grass fibres are a brilliant way of introducing texture and detail to a model railway, and they can be blended together to create unique colours and contrasts, resulting in some outstanding realistic effects. The beauty of these fibres is that they're individual, and once they're applied with a suitable device, they'll stand on end and give you a nice realistic grass effect. Here we have a selection of tools that'll help you get the best out of these products, including PVA glue, which has been decanted into a washing-up liquid bottle, water to mix with the PVA glue, a selection of brushes to spread the glue onto your layout, and, most importantly of all, a knock grassmaster, which is the device that applies the static charge to the grass fibres to make them stand on end. The first stage of the ground cover is to apply a base colour of paint on the section you wish to create. For this, we use a simple ready-mixed brown poster paint, which has been brushed onto this piece of plywood as preparation for ground cover. Having applied the green flock ground cover, you can see there's a lot of excess here. In a layout situation, you can use a brush or sweep it off once the PVA is dried. Just watch how much excess material can be recovered by simply tapping the sheet. For these examples, we have two colour choices for the base coating of our ground cover to create two different types of field effects. The green sheet is best suited to a lush green field of grass, whereas the brown one is better suited to a farmed field, such as a straw field. To create a suitable glue mix for applying the first layer of static grass, a let-down mixture of PVA glue and water is required. Around a 70-30 ratio between the two is what you're aiming for to create the right consistency. Mix it in thoroughly until it's ready to apply to your layout. Make sure there are no lumps and bumps in the mixture. If you find the mixture's too thick, you can add more water. If you think it's too thin, add more glue. For the next task, we're going to create a straw field using different lengths of static grass fibres, using Green Scene's straw-coloured products, one long, one medium length. The knock grassmaster is filled with the static grass fibres, blending the two lengths together to achieve the desired effect in the field. The first stage is to pick up the grassmaster device, unwind the meshed end of the holder and add a handful of medium-sized fibres first, followed by the longer length material, dropping it into the grassmaster device, ready for use. As part of the scene, we're going to create some tractor tracks in the field first. To do this, you'll need a smaller brush which is dipped into the PVA glue, and then a line of glue is drawn in the desired position. Remember, wherever you put the glue, static grass will stick. We'll fill in between these tracks to create the rest of the straw field, carefully leaving a gap between sections. The earthing point pin that helps create the circuit and makes the static grassmaster system work is placed in the top corner, and the crocodile clip from the device is then attached. Switch on the static grassmaster, turn it upside down, and start shaking the fibres out over the previously applied glue. It takes just a few minutes to cover the area, and hopefully the tractor tracks will become apparent. Once again, remember that wherever the glue is, the static grass will stick. Therefore, always ensure that any other scenic treatment work is dry before applying static grass, otherwise it may stick in places you don't want it to. Don't be afraid to cover the area a couple of times, the more the merrier at this stage. Take an old toothbrush and flick a light sprinkling of PVA glue over the area of previously applied static grass using your thumb, so we can add some poppy field heads to the scene as well. Add a small amount of red material onto the field to suggest flowering poppies to complete the scene. This is the larger diorama we've developed to demonstrate different static grass effects and techniques. It follows the same basic principles of what we've shown you so far. As a starting point, we've got a bare-painted, plastercloth-covered landform, which also includes a section with the first layer of ground cover. And to the rear of the diorama, we've also used textured paint to act as the basis for painting a road. To finish the base ground cover, we start with neat PVA applied to the bare brown painted section. Use plenty of glue, don't be afraid. Then, using a 2-inch paintbrush, lightly wet it with water, and then use this to move the neat PVA around the section of ground cover, ensuring you have a neat and even area of glue throughout. Also, make sure it covers right up to the ballast, or any other colours you've already laid on the layout, ensuring there's a good overlap in these areas to prevent bare lines occurring between sections. Make sure the PVA is worked into all the pores of the plaster bandage, and it covers everything. Next, we start to add our pre-mixed selection of grass flock, taking a pinch of the material and sprinkling it into the wet PVA. Use plenty of material, as you can always collect any excess later in the process once it's dried. In this case, more is quite simply more. Once this stage is dry, you can move to applying the static grass fibres. The first task is to add more diluted PVA glue to the area, spreading it in evenly over the first layer of ground cover in the area to be worked. Then you simply apply the static grass as before, this time using grass-coloured strands. We've used a different mixture of fibres this time. Our selection includes medium spring, medium summer, long summer and medium straw. This variety of colours gives a much more realistic effect once it's been applied. Make sure you sprinkle plenty of material into the areas of glue until you achieve the desired effect and the cover begins to build. To add extra depth and colour, use a mixture of different coloured flocks, sprinkling them in by hand. We're using a mix of Woodland Scenics blended green turf and green scene colours. Again, don't worry about adding too much material, as much of it can be gathered up once the glue has dried and can be used again. Once the glue has dried, the next stage involves removal of any excess material. We're using an old vacuum cleaner nozzle. As you can see, as the material's removed, the scene comes to fruition, particularly the tracks in the road. The next stage is adding a second layer of static grass, again using the old toothbrush method and gently flicking diluted PVA glue over the area required on the previously applied layer of grass. Be careful not to get any glue on the track though, otherwise static grass will stick there too, which isn't ideal. This process will create a random effect for a second layer of grass, and you can create heavier patches if you wish by applying more glue, and lighter patches with less glue. Now we can add the second layer of static grass over the newly applied glue, using the Grassmaster device, which serves to increase the depth of the grass in the selected areas. To top it off, add in a sprinkle of mixed blended green turf to give it a little extra depth. To add a little more texture to the area, we first take a piece of paper as a mask for the structures, and then spray matte varnish over the completed grass, adding in some heavier textures as we go using Woodland Scenics coarse turfs. Don't be afraid to use a couple of different colours. You can also blend in with a little more fine turf material too. This stage is all about building up the depth of grasses. Once you're happy, fix it with a gentle spray over the top and clear any resulting debris from the track. To add a little extra colour, we're using these purple colours from the Woodland Scenics range, which provides just a hint of colour to the ground, with the suggestion of flowers. A quick spray will seal the ground cover in place. This process is also suitable for adding static grass. Starting with a spray of matte varnish, then connect the static Grassmaster once again. You need to be careful how you direct the grass when working on embankments, carefully shaking the device over the areas you wish to with extra grass. In this case, don't let the grass go everywhere. Less is more. It just serves to add more depth to the grass. Then to finish, come back in with the matte varnish, a little dusting of extra texture to blend it in, and then seal in place, resulting in a very neat appearance. Finally, to finish off the bridge area, we built up a small hedge alongside the road using Woodland Scenics fine leaf foliage, which is effectively a ready-made hedge in a box. You can create your own pieces from it and work them to the shape you'd like them to be. It's a quick, neat and effective way of blending structures into the scenery. The initial stage is to place everything as you want it, and then come back and glue it into place, presenting a neat finish where the bridge is moulded into the rest of the scenery. Scenic application complete. Whitby Westcliff featured in the September 2014 and September 2016 issues of Hornby Magazine. Brad Seaman's outstanding 45-foot by 10-foot layout is set on BR's northeastern region in 1950 and portrays a short section of the North Yorkshire coastline at the popular resort. The layout started life as an end-to-end scheme, comprising Whitby Westcliff Station and the amazing scratch-built wrought-iron Upgang Viaduct. Subsequently, the layout has been reimagined, with new sections either side of Whitby Westcliff Station, including Prospect Hill Junction to the east and a new U-shaped single-line stretch to the west, leading to Upgang and 2 new viaducts. Prospect Hill Junction is where lines diverged to Whitby Town and Scarborough Central. Its most distinctive feature is the stunning Prospect Hill signal box, which straddles the line on its steep climb from Whitby Town. The delightful Whitby Westcliff Station features 3 platform faces, together with goods yards and a loading dock. The buildings are all scratch-built, while platforms have been populated with passengers, parcels and luggage. Analog controlled, all track is hand-built using C&L components. Locomotives and rolling stock have been sympathetically weathered to portray the work-weary appearance of the prototypes at this time. After Whitby West Cliff, the railway crosses 3 incredible hand-built viaducts, including the 2 new additions, East Row and New Holm Beck, each of which has been meticulously scratch-built from plywood, styrene sheet, brass, metal and nickel-silver. Our driver's eye view affords a good view of this single-line stretch on board a British Railways L1 264 tank. The realistic scenery is highlighted by the natural outdoor light, and notice also the telegraph poles along the route. First is Upgang Viaduct, seen here with a Worsdale G5 piloting a Thompson B1, followed by New Holm Beck Viaduct. Finally, our journey's end approaches after passing a few camping coaches, and we head over East Row Viaduct, sitting high above the ice cream parlour and beach, on what appears to be a very busy day. Brambleton Model Railway Club differs from most of its counterparts as its layout is entirely outside, set in woodland in Harpenden, Hertfordshire, and is open to members of the public. This extensive layout consists of 2 distinct sections, in O gauge and 16.5mm narrow gauge. Beginning our journey in the terminus station at Brambleton, equipped with Hornby Magazine's train cam, we take a driver's eye view round the O gauge circuit. As the layout is set over a large area, communication between sections is by signalling bell code, while locomotives are battery-powered and radio-controlled. As we pass through 9 Elms, a Class 33 hauled Freightliner service passes in the opposite direction, while families track the progress of our train. We slow on the approaches to Minfold and head past the sidings, playing host today to a solitary BR Mark I carriage and a goods train formed of steel mineral and wooden planked open wagons. Approaching from the opposite direction, a Hymek passes, hauling a short passenger train, as we regain the 2-line stretch to Newton and its extensive sidings filled with goods and passenger motive power and rolling stock. Passenger and freight stock is mainly proprietary ready to run, with examples including Triang Big Train, Lima, Bassett Loc and more, with locomotives from the same fold, together with a selection of converted recent Heljan products. Track is mainly Pico Nickel Silver with hand-built points. As we head further into the woodland, we curve sharply into Bropeth North, where a Britannia 462 prepares to depart in the opposite direction, and we draw to a halt alongside another goods train, which is also about to depart, with plenty of observers to welcome our arrival. As we pause at Bropeth North, the Britannia departs, while a Class 47 hauled set of BR Mark Is follows into the loop. Completing the busy series of movements here, the Gresley A3 hauled Pullman train departs towards Newton. With the route clear, we depart. As you can see, the model railway here is a popular attraction, particularly in good weather. It's generally available for use between April and October each year, with 2 annual public open days in May and September. Bropeth South is our next call, as the Britannia hauled passenger service continues its journey, closely followed by the A3 hauled Pullman train as it approaches and slows to a halt. A Freightliner train can be glimpsed in the distance. We regain our path and continue through the well-kept grounds, heading towards Limpsham and more stabling, with the Southern Electric Multiple Unit awaiting its next departure. As Brambleton has no power supply, signalling block instruments are powered with car batteries, and all locomotives are battery-powered too. A forward and reverse switch is located on each locomotive to ease operation. Our next port of call is Darlington, as we pass the signal box and a goods train headed by an LNER J36. At this point, a single-track overbridge crosses the double-track mainline below, where a Clayton Class 17 hauled freight passes an express Pullman train. Once the line's clear, we rejoin the main line heading towards Stockton, passing through a covered storage area and regaining the original route towards Nine Elms before eventually arriving back at Brambleton Station. Tracing its history back to the 1940s, the club was officially formed in the mid-1950s by a group of local schoolboys looking to run their clockwork trains. As well as the section of O-gauge track, the layout also features an extensive 16mm narrow gauge railway too, with a large collection of SM32 Garden Railway locomotives in stock. Our journey on this section begins at Roundwood, where locomotives are prepared, ready for their next turn of duty. All the routes are quite complex, with entwined circles and loops. And whilst we won't be travelling along every section, we'll pass back through Roundwood during our journey on the run to the interchange at Limpsham. Much of this section of the journey is on single track and offers superb views of the delightful grounds in which the layout is set, and includes some superb structures such as this double-track bridge and a series of tunnels too, which are always guaranteed to impress onlookers as trains emerge. A variety of live steam locomotives are used on this part of the layout, including Accucraft, Mamod and Roundhouse products. In this next section, as well as keeping an eye on the view ahead, our train cam affords an extra view of the locomotive behind, providing an added perspective to the run, as we swing onto, over and off the bridge. A superb selection of live steam, gas-powered and battery electric motive power is also employed on the line. On the approaches once again to Roundwood, we set back into the yard to allow another train to pass. Once clear, we continue and head through the main yard, with trains being prepared either side. The narrow gauge line is operated regularly throughout the year and culminates in a popular New Year's Eve lineup. With journey's end approaching, we arrive at Limpsham Station, the interchange point with the O-gauge section of the layout. Brambleton is set to appear in Hornby Magazine during the spring. St Michael's Bridge appeared in the October 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Owned and operated by Chelmsford and District Model Railway Club, this stunning O-gauge layout is set in the 1940s, 50s and 60s, with no particular location in mind, its primary purpose being to enable members to run their extensive collection of rolling stock. Measuring 26 foot by 16 foot, the main line on this continuous loop exhibition layout exits the storage yard top left and emerges from a tunnel, passing a row of terrace houses, a 3-platform station area, busy goods yard, and a warehouse and factory complex, before its return to the off-scene area. Our visit to the layout today coincides with a wedding taking place at the towering church sat above the tunnel, as the wedding party is blessed by the vicar outside, and the church organist attempts to compete with a passing sound-fitted Class 47 diesel below, hauling a rake of BR Mark I coaches. On the approaches to the station, there's a rail-served warehouse to the right, although look closely and the tracks are part of a separate narrow-gauge railway. In the station, a Class 52 Western awaits departure, while a DMU ticks over in the bay platform. As the Class 47 pulls into the station, a goods train approaches the yard, hauled by a J94 060 saddle tank, with a mixed train of box vans, tanks and open wagons. Scenic detail is paramount on the layout, from scratch-built structures to well-tended fields, and hedgerows, trees, telegraph poles, yard lamps and much more. On the far right, you can catch a glimpse of the narrow gauge railway, as the goods train continues its journey through the yard. Tetley to Twining appeared in the May 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Showcasing N-gauge at its best, this L-shaped layout owned by Stephen Edwards neatly sits on a shelf in the conservatory. Built in separate sections, at different stages in its life, it's DCC controlled and measures 13 foot 6 inches by 9 inches. Tetley and Twining Holt are set at each end of the layout, with a regular passenger service operating between the two. On this occasion, a Central Trains liveried Class 153 and Class 156 DMU combination prepare to depart for Twining Holt. Predominantly set in the modern era, Stephen has an anything goes policy in terms of motive power and rolling stock. As the units depart Tetley Station, they pass the small fuelling point and edge past the John Amber factory as wagons wait to be loaded. As they approach their destination, a Central Trains livery Class 150 two-car DMU prepares to head in the opposite direction. Billingham appeared in the September 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Built by members of the Middlesbrough Model Railway Club, this large analogue-controlled double-O-gauge exhibition layout measures 40 feet by 11 feet and depicts the North Eastern Station and surrounds during the mid-1950s to early 60s period. As you might expect for an industrial area, the line sees much freight activity. Thompson B1 61132 leads a block working of dolomite containers through the station, heading towards the junction. Attention to detail is superb, with equal focus to the station, signal box, nearby houses, gardens, track work, fields, and more. BR9F 92006 heads a rake of insulated containers on conflats through the junction and onwards towards the station. Meanwhile, an A3 hauled working of box vans and cattle wagons approaches from the opposite direction. The local stopping service is in the hands of LNER G5 044 Tank 67338 as it passes the standout signal box at Billingham. Finally, a Class 47 motors through the junction on the approaches to the station on an express passenger working. Mastering basic soldering skills are essential for the railway modeller. Hornby Magazine's Trevor Jones started at the age of just 9. And thousands of connections later, he shares a few hints and tips through this exclusive soldering tutorial. Starting with basic wiring, obviously, a soldering iron is the most important tool required. For model railway wiring, we recommend Antex 15-watt or 25-watt irons, which prove ideal when joining wires and attaching them to the track. For electrical wiring, you only require one type of solder, and Trevor recommends a tin lead solder with a flux core. Now, while this solder contains some flux, an additional flux can ensure better joins, and for normal use, a gel paste is available, such as rosin flux. If working with track that's corroded, a regular occurrence on Trevor's outdoor garden layout, a more corrosive flux, such as power flow flux, is more ideal. Other equipment required includes wire strippers, pliers, snips, files, emery board, and a small screwdriver. And for joining cable, heat seal. The first task is to strip the cable with wire strippers. Then place a small amount of rosin flux onto the cable and the track. Clean the soldering iron on a wet sponge. Pick up a little solder from the reel with the soldering iron and tin the wire. Then tin the track, making sure you do so in a quick manner so as not to distort the adjoining plastic sleepers. With the cable held firmly against the side of the rail, introduce the soldering iron to heat the wire and the rail. Both have to reach the melting point of the solder for a good joint. Here you can see the completed, cleaned-up joint, with the cable routed beneath the baseboard. With the track that's corroded, it's often necessary to clean the rail, and here Trevor's using a dentist's drill bit in a small mini-drill. Then use the power flow flux on the rail and tin it. Again, attach the end of the wire, making sure that sufficient heat is transferred to the rail. You should see the solder run. You can then test the strength of the joint by giving it a gentle pull, and remember to clean the corrosive flux from the rail thoroughly. Our next project is to join two sections of wire together. Firstly, having added a small section of heat seal to the cable, twist the wires together. Then add flux to the exposed wire. Pick up a small amount of solder with the soldering iron and run the solder along the exposed wire joint. Also remember to clean the resin from the flux. Next, slide the heat seal into place over the exposed joint and then seal in place using a suitable heat source. Trevor's using the edge of the soldering iron to help the heat seal shrink, but alternative heat source methods, such as air blower tools, can also be used. Having mastered these basic soldering skills, you're ready to start wiring the layout and perhaps create your own control board, where your newly acquired techniques will prove invaluable. Broxfield featured in the March 2014 and August 2017 issues of Hornby Magazine. Roger Lattimore's outstanding 36-foot by 12-foot double-O-gauge analogue-controlled layout is set in Hertfordshire during the 1950s and 60s and features a large 4-track mainline, together with the recent addition of a branch line to Buntingford. This new section includes a small terminus station, 2 platform faces, sidings and a run-round loop. Our journey follows the progress of the branch line train as it departs Buntingford, bound for the mainline station at Broxfield. Today's service is headed by an N7 062 tank, hauling 3 suburban coaches. Our train heads out of the station, past the signal box and cattle dock, and gradually builds up speed as it trundles along the tree-lined branch towards the main line and its first station stop. As it begins its descent towards the junction below, the 3-coach train runs parallel for a time with a cattle train negotiating the adjacent main line. The first station stop is Hertford Junction, a low-relief structure made all the more effective with an industrial photographic back scene. On departure, the N7 passes beneath the elevated Hertford Junction signal box and continues along what has become a 5-track stretch of the layout. Good use of back scenes has been adopted around the layout, as well as inclusion of plenty of detail in the foreground too, with road vehicles and small scenic details adding to the overall scene, such as the mailbags awaiting collection by a passing travelling post office. To give the impression of added depth, the N7 passes through a cutting on its approach to Ware St Margaret's station, before drawing to a halt in the platform. As it departs, the N7 immediately passes over the level crossing and begins its final approach to Broxfield, crossing the main lines bound for one of the bay platforms. As it does so, the train passes the large motive power depot, which on this occasion sees the distinctive English Electric Deltic prototype DP1 on shed. A brief glimpse of this extensive layout's control panel helps put its sheer size into perspective. Now on the final approaches, our train enters the lengthy bay platform at Broxfield as a through express approaches in the opposite direction on the main line. Journey's End. Grosvenor Square debuted in Hornby Magazine's yearbook number 9. Set in the Midlands, this DCC-operated layout follows BR Western Region practice and includes a large terminus station with 7 platform faces, carriage sidings and a locomotive stabling point. The imposing station building is an anglicised American station kit, reimagined and weathered to suit a British Railways prototype, while the main platforms feature an overall station roof, which takes the Pico 00 gauge kit to another level, having been extended, enhanced and also weathered to complete the appearance. Most station arrivals and departures are locomotive hauled, such as this Britannia 462, arriving with a parcels service. With a 12-foot by 3-foot scenic section, the station approach is formed of 5 main lines, linked to a reverse loop storage yard, which provide access to the platforms together with the sidings at the top and bottom of the diagram. DAPOL's working GWR semaphore signals are employed on each platform, as a Class 47 prepares to depart Grosvenor Square on an interregional service. Brush prototype D0260 Lion arrives light engine to head the next departure. KD couplings are used on all locomotives and rolling stock to enable quick hands-free coupling and uncoupling at exhibitions. As the immaculate locomotive departs on a mixed rake of coaches, BR Standard Class 8P Duke of Gloucester follows light engine, before heading to the storage yard for turning, ahead of its next duty. Low relief buildings feature in the background to suggest further depth to the scene. Colic King 6029 King Edward VIII approaches the station and slowly edges past the signal box. At exhibitions, this signal box also emits authentic sounds of levers being pulled and bell codes ringing, adding to the overall atmosphere of this busy station. With the route cleared, 6029 is ready to depart and hauls the parcels train on its onward journey. Appleton Junction appeared in the December 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Set in the 1950s and 60s, this 28-foot by 8-foot 00 gauge layout represents a fictional stretch of the East Coast Main Line just south of York, where the London Midland and Eastern routes converge during the transition from steam to diesel. As a result, a wide selection of LNER and LMS motive power appears, together with BR standard classes and the occasional diesel locomotive too. Gently simmering at the colour light signals, a Robinson J11 is given a clear road across the junction and slowly gathers pace with its train of loaded 16-ton steel mineral open wagons. Meanwhile, approaching the junction in the opposite direction, a Gresley V2 passes, hauling a passenger service. A steady stream of trains can be represented on both routes, and as a Stania 8F draws to a halt just ahead of the junction, a Gresley A4 hauled express approaches, formed of an impressive rank of Pullman cars. Franco Crosty Boilered 9F 92023, with its distinctive side-mounted chimney, approaches from the north and takes the Midland route with a lengthy rake of box vans and conflats with containers. With the route clear, the northbound 8F departs towards York, and as it slowly heads into the distance, we can appreciate how ordinary life has been captured so well, with a few houses close by, a post box, telephone box, car parked on the drive, and dustbins about to be emptied. As the layouts set during the transition period, a few diesel classes also appear, including this lone Class 33 on a cement working, hauling a train of press-flow bulk powder wagons. Finally, in the distance, prototype Deltic English Electric DP1 approaches on a London-bound East Coast Main Line passenger service as a trainload of conflats heads north. The Great Electric Train Show 2017, sponsored by Hornby Magazine, took place at the British Motor Museum in Gaydon on October 7th and 8th. 27 layouts, 30 traders, plus a selection of demonstrations entertained the thousands of visitors who attended this year's show. Amongst the winners of this year's trophies was Mostyn, owned and operated by Barrowmore Model Railway Group, which won Best in Show. Set in 1977, this stunning P4 layout features a large collection of fine-scale rolling stock and motive power, and we'll see more of it shortly. Middlesbrough Model Railway Club's 00 gauge layout Billingham won Best Scenic Layout, with impressive detailing to its distinctive scratch-built signal box, prefabricated houses and superb gardens helping secure the award. Peter Griffith's recently extended 00 gauge Crimson Road was awarded Best Digital Layout. Representing a working diesel depot at the turn of the 21st century, digital operation was to the fore, with plenty of DCC sound-fitted models in operation. This year's show also saw Hornby Magazine's 00 gauge BR Southern Region layout, 12 Trees Junction, make its debut in its new enlarged continuous circuit format. The newly added storage yard provides a multitude of route permutations and enables much more stock to be utilised to keep spectators entertained, with plenty of movements through the station and across the junction, with the aim of always keeping something on the move to keep that sense of a busy Southern Region location. Join us as we take a ride on the footplate of this bullied Pacific, courtesy of Hornby Magazine's train cam, as we slowly head through the main station platform approaching the junction. To the left, you can see the distinctive Southern signal box and electric multiple unit depot, with units stapled between duties, while a bully diesel approaches hauling a rake of Pullman carriages, and a Class 71 hauled rake of ferry vans is looped on the slow line, awaiting a clear path across the junction, as we arrive back in the storage yard. Kingsbury is owned by Barnhill Model Railway Club and appeared in the December 2016 issue of Hornby Magazine. Set in the late 1940s, this stunning O-gauge layout is based on a fictitious location in the West Country. For the best view, we hop aboard Collet Manor 7801 Anthony Manor for a quick run into the station, passing a British Railways liveried pannier tank and an LMS visitor in the yard. At 43 foot long, the layout comprises a locomotive depot, goods yard, station through platform, bay platform, loop line, and a dockside wharf goods yard. As seen here, with a saddle tank reversing alongside the dock as it runs round a pair of wagons, before propelling them back towards the station area. Bear Banks appeared in the August 2016 issue of Hornby Magazine. and was inspired by the junction and station at Barrelston in Devon. Owned by Keith Sully, this 00 gauge layout is set in 1970, with motive power supplied by a host of Westerns, warships and Hymeks, together with classes 25, 33, 37, 47 and DMUs, such as this Class 122 diesel railcar seen arriving in the bay platform. Representing a typical summer Saturday, the layout's busy with holidaymaker services, including this Class 52 hauled motor rail train, slowly drawing to a halt. Other services include China Clay Workings, parcels traffic and ballast from Meldon Quarry. Period vehicles include a post office van awaiting mail and a good selection of BR personnel carriers in the yard. DCC controlled, all locomotives are fitted with digital sound. Rannoch Moor is owned by Mark Darragh and appeared in the October 2016 issue of Hornby Magazine. Taking inspiration from the rail station on the West Highland Line in Scotland, the layout measures 10 foot by 9 foot and aims to represent operations from 2005 onwards. Amongst the standout modelling are the distinctive island platform, footbridge and scratch-built buildings, and of course the superb viaduct that curves away at one end of the layout. Motive power includes Class 156 DMUs, represented by the recently released Realtrack models example, as well as Class 66s, Class 37s and more. Control is digital using Gagemaster's Prodigy system, with all locomotives fitted with digital sound. Even the TPWS line-side status indicators on the stopboards are fully working and operated digitally. A colourful array of motive power and rolling stock adds plenty of variety to operations, such as this Class 66 hauled train of tanks bound for the aluminium smelter at Fort William. Mostyn is Barrowmore Model Railway Group's recreation of the North Wales Coast Main Line in 1977, and represents accurately researched and formed passenger, parcels and freight trains, utilising over 600 vehicles and a roster of Class 24, 25, 40 and 47 locomotives, illustrated superbly by this two-tone green Class 47 hauled parcels train. Meticulously modelled, attention to detail is superb across all areas, from the gardens to the heavy summer traffic on the adjacent main road, and the multiple DMU formations prevalent during this time on the line. Our final visit is to Leicester Belgrave Road, which appeared in the July 2017 issue of Hornby Magazine. Here, a Class 101 DMU departs from beneath the impressive train shed with a local service. Owned by Abingdon and District Model Railway Club, the layout's based on the Great Northern Terminus in Leicester. A mainline express formed of Pullman cars departs Leicester Belgrave Road bound for King's Cross, skirting the extensive sidings, goods yard and locomotive depot as it goes, before disappearing from view on its journey south. And that brings to an end our highlights from this year's Great Electric Train Show 2017. And a gentle reminder that the Great Electric Train Show 2018 takes place over the weekend of October 13th and 14th. We look forward to seeing you there. And that concludes this edition of the Hornby Magazine DVD. We hope you've enjoyed the journey.